Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this unboxing of Battlefront's Flames of War Iron Cross unit cards. On the back, it lets you know that you've got 35 unit cards with all the statistics and information that you're going to need. Now again, you don't have to buy the unit cards in order to play because you get the information from the Iron Cross sourcebook. You can check that out in another video that I've done. But it does make things a little bit easier. That's what I've noticed. Because these also incorporate the special rules, whether it's by nationality or doctrine, things like that. So that's kind of a plus in that regard. So let's check out, let's see what we have on the inside. Okay. Nice and sealed. It's similar to the North African sets. Okay, I'm almost treating it like playing cards. Well, in a way they are. Okay, so we got our force diagram here. Panzer Grenadier Company, our Panzer III and Panzer IV Company, and then of course on the back it tells you for your support units that are available to the forces. It also gives you the serial number of the model box that you're going to need. They talk about formation support, allied support, which, you know, for the Germans, the only thing I can think of for allied support would be Italians, you know, for version 4 at this point in time. Okay, let's take a quick look here. So here's our Panzer IV HQ unit. If you look at the symbol here, I believe this is the 7th Panzer Division, the Ghost. So you can see again, as with the regular cards, which also harkens back to Team Yankee, again it tells you what is the unit hit on, what are the armor factors for the front, side, rear, the top. Talks about the motivation, that they're confident, but for last stand and remount it's a little bit different, it's less, and that's because of the Third Reich special rule, and then the protected ammo, and then of course it gives you your movement rates here, including your cross number, and then of course it gives you your weapon stats, and depending if you get the short or the long, that makes the difference, because if you get the short, you can use those as artillery, and on the back that'll give you your point values and any particular special rules, any formations that you would have to go with this Panzer IV company. And then we have a Panzer IV platoon, again, regular, just like everything else, complete with the point values, the options, and the special rules that you have. Here we have the Panzer III company. Again, it's all laid out in the exact same format, so there's no confusion. Point values, what can you take with the Panzer III company, and the special rules that you have. Panzer III up armored, because as before I want to point out that if you look at World War II as a whole, you saw an arms race, especially with armored vehicles, getting the bigger gun, getting more armor on there, changing the design. But the Panzer III was around for a large part of the war as a design. The Panzer IV stayed till the end of the war, so it was there in 1939 and worked its way to 1945. Okay, Panzer III platoon. Again, they're skilled, they're veteran, they know what they're doing. Panzer III up armored. How here is the Panzer III mixed, because in reality, when the newer versions of the Panzer IIIs were coming out, it wasn't that all the units immediately got all of them. This took time, okay? So if you've got 50 tanks in your division that need to be replaced, 1 week you might get 5 to 10 tanks, and they get replaced. And then the following week it may be another 5 tanks. So the idea of it being mixed, that's not entirely crazy. That does happen, that you're not going to have the exact same model in your units. And again here it shows you how to recognize the difference between like the long 50 millimeter gun. Sorry guys, I know it's 5 centimeter, 50. I still remember 50 millimeter because I think about my squad leader days. Okay, and here how to recognize it from being the regular to the up armored to the short 75. Don't laugh about the short 75. That can be very nasty with that. Panzer II light tank platoon. They did exist. They were still there even in 1942, and you can see that definitely they are weaker compared to their Mark III and Mark IV cousins. And again, you get all the same stats, point values, special rules. And here we finally get it for the first time in V4, the Panzer Grenadier Company HQ. So, now could these also represent SS? One could argue that. One could, although I think the motivation probably would be more fearless. And that being said, if it's the SS being fearless, then they would cost more points, actually, if you stop and think about it. So on the back, again, what are your limitations you can take with your Panzer Grenadier Company? Your point values, special rules. Okay, Panzer Grenadier Platoon. Okay, now this is your SMG-34 heavy machine gun team. Okay, so you can, again, now we're looking at the infantry. Can have some nasty stuff with them. You can choose to have 4 teams or 2 teams for the requisite points, and then of course you have your special rules. You have your 8 centimeter mortar section. Okay, again, with version 4 now they use an artillery template, but now you can go ahead and fire. Even if one tube you can fire, it's just that you have to re-roll successful hits. That, I think, is a fair trade-off when you look from Battlefront. And then, of course, point values, special rules. The 75 millimeter infantry gun, nice to have, good for close support, I would think. You have a choice of 2 or 4 of them. And again, special rules for those guys. And then you have the 150 millimeter infantry gun platoon. Again, ooh, that would be nasty to be right point blank on this. But it is also, you know, an artillery, so it uses the artillery template. So we're seeing here, compared to the desert theater, the Africa Corps, you're seeing some more weapons here. But at that point, you guys have to remember that the North African desert region, that was not as top priority compared to the Russian front, because the Russian front involved much more space, much more terrain to deal with. You had a lot more men that were involved, machines, equipment, supplies, you name it. We now have our Grenadier Company headquarters. All right. Again, what are the limits? What you can take with your Grenadier Company? Point value, and then the special rules to go with it. Your platoon, same thing. Now, could these be used for SS? You know, if you want to go and monkey around and work with motivation ratings, but then that alters the points too. And I don't know how Battlefront would work with the points on this. Assault Pioneer Platoon, think of these guys. These were your assault engineers. These are the guys who had demo charges, flamethrowers, and they would go in and they were clearing out buildings in room-to-room fighting. They were they were kind of an elite group of troops. Again, same thing. What are the rules here? Point values, options you have. Again, the 8 centimeter mortar platoon. Sniper, here we go. We did not get this in the desert campaign. That doesn't mean they never existed. They just did not have them in the campaign. So here we have a sniper. And again, special rules, point value, and of course the ubiquitous Tiger, which again, if you were to compare it to the North Africa Tiger, I'm pretty sure it's the same. Special rules, point values. Now remember, the Tigers are not cheap. Okay, that's quite an investment. They're not a core unit. They are a support unit. If your core units, if you go down to less than 2 units in good order, yeah, that's not good. The Tiger isn't going to help you at that point. So losing the Tiger isn't the end of the world necessarily. Early Stug here. This is basically the Sturmgeschütz with the short-barreled 75mm gun, which is what you had at the beginning of the war. They had a few of them in 1940 France, and later on as the war progressed, just like improving on the tanks, they mounted the long-barrel 75mm, and that became a very difficult tank destroyer to deal with. So it was successful even until the end of the war. The Martyr. Now the 7.62 centimeter or 76.2 millimeter, that's the Russian gun, because at the beginning of the Russian campaign, many Russian 76 millimeter guns were captured. So the German engineers figured out, why can't we go and put this on the hulls of our 38Ts and make these tank hunters or tank destroyers? And they did. And you got to see some of these again in North Africa. Your famous scout cars, armored cars if you want to call them that, they're there. Just because they're weak, I would not dismiss them, because they can do really awesome things like spearhead moves and things like that. Okay, 37 mil tank hunter platoon. Okay, the 50 millimeter tank hunter platoon, the 75 millimeter tank hunter platoon. Then we come to the artillery, 105 millimeter artillery. And then we have the rocket launcher, the Nebelwerfer. Okay, which in this case they don't use an artillery template, they use a salvo template. Which, if you happen to have a Team Yankee box set, you probably did get a salvo template, and that would be useful. But yeah, this would work. The Nebelwerfers were rocket launchers, and they were nasty against infantry. Of course, the Russians had their own version. Here is the Panzer II OP, our observation post. So again, weak tank, but its job is very, very simple. It's called, I'm calling in artillery. Anti-aircraft, okay. Here is the 20 mil mounted on there. I believe it's the 20 millimeter, yeah. So yeah, very nasty. Puts out lots of bullets into the air in a very short period of time. The dreaded 88. Okay, Rommel used that dual purpose both in France and in North Africa. And then we have Stukas. Now there's two versions of the Stuka here, and they are, while many of the basics are the same, they're not exactly the same weaponry. This one has the 37 millimeter anti-tank gun mounted underneath. So when the Stuka would dive, they could fire some rounds and hit like the engine decking, hit the turret top of the tank, where the armor tends to be a bit thinner compared to the sides and the front. Nasty, very nasty. And then of course the original Stuka, complete with its bombs, 500 kilogram bombs. Really nasty, nasty stuff to deal with. Okay, so now you got a quick review here of the unit cards and some comments that I've made as we go through, as I see fit, some tidbits, a little bit of trivia to help make it a little bit more alive. I hope that this benefited you, and God bless you, and take care. Have a good one.